Association for the incredible work that they do. They are the most probably proactive line association in the entire province in a region that is NDP dominated. So the work that you put in is like extra valuable. Honestly, can we do a round of applause for this, guys? Thank you. It's so wonderful to be here. I'm truly thrilled. And it really, for me, is all about the two little people that I left at home today after eating dinner with them to come here, and that's my kids. My little guy is 6 and my daughter is 8. And when I look at the future of this province, I am so worried. Looking at that generation and the generation that is entering out into the working world today, and I'm looking at what they're facing, I'm realizing that they may not be able to say what I'm able to say at this point in my life, which is that I am a born and raised, lifelong British Columbian, and there is nowhere else I'd rather be. They're going to enter that working world, as so many young people are, and they're going to be looking elsewhere for those opportunities if we don't change something really, really quick. 70,000 British Columbians left this province last year alone for opportunities elsewhere. They're looking at places like Alberta, they're seeing cheaper housing prices, they're seeing bigger paychecks, they're seeing lower taxes. Those are hard things to say no to when you're trying to start a business, start your first real job, build a family, contribute to your community. And you can't blame them for making those choices. It's our responsibility as political leaders, as people who are standing up to say, we're going to create a better province for them. That's what I'm going to do. I'm looking at what British Columbia has to offer right now. And truly, there is no reason why we shouldn't be the place in Canada that the best and brightest are coming to from every other jurisdiction in Canada, instead of fleeing from. If you look at what we have, other jurisdictions would kill to have it. Like, we have an abundance of natural resources. We have an incredibly skilled and talented workforce, people who want to work in BC, a business community, BC-based businesses who want to invest in BC, who aren't really doing so right now. We have access to some of the world's biggest markets off our shores. We are so fortunate. And that's what I'm doing this for, is to make sure that we are that place in Canada where the best and brightest are coming to. And we can be, but we won't be if we continue with this NDP government. And you're all here, like, this is an incredible crowd. You're all here, I think, because you recognize what's at stake right now in BC. You recognize that we are not going to get the economy firing on all cylinders until we repeal DRIPA. That is a legislative priority for me. I will do it on day one of the legislature sitting after we form government.
You're here.
It's not enough just to repeal DRIPA. We have to get back to protecting private property rights in this province. We have got to. We have a government that is tied the hands of the government lawyers that all of you pay with your tax dollars and say you can't make certain arguments to best protect private property in the courts. I'll rescind that directive. And I'll make it very, very clear to our government lawyers that we are going to court, we are going to fight to the best of our ability in the public interest, and that means protecting private property rights in British Columbia. I'll do it, and I'll make sure that there's no misunderstanding about the need to assert ourselves properly in the courts. We also need to make sure that we are ending the strangulation by regulation that is happening all over this province, that is pushing business away from this province. I'll make sure that when we're looking at an ever-growing size of government, which is spending beyond what anybody would have ever thought was conceivable. Frankly, they're spending like drunken sailors in this province right now. They're creating 5 public sector jobs for every 1 private sector job. That's completely unsustainable. And we all know that. The worst part is, by the way, when they've grown that public service by 39% since they formed government, they're not hiring the best and brightest. They're hiring people based on identity checkboxes. They're hiring people based on things that really shouldn't matter, like skin color. I will get back to merit-based hiring in British Columbia. Because taxpayers deserve the best of the best working for them. There are so many instances of this government's incredibly flawed ideology that is so far removed from the values of everyday British Columbians. We know that you can't strangle the private sector and expect it to prosper. We know that when it comes to DRIPA, decisions over public land and resources need to be made by the people that we elect. We know that when it comes to government spending, we know from our household budgets as everyday British Columbians, we know that you can't just keep spending beyond your means and not expect a big, huge interest bill to get at the end of the day. Well, the same thing applies to things like public safety. We know, as everyday British Columbians, ask my 6-year-old son, where do violent reoffenders belong? Do they belong in neighborhoods or jail? My son will tell you jail. We all know they belong in jail. But the NDP ideology that keeps putting the rights of violent criminals to reoffend over the rights of regular British Columbians to go about their days safely, that's wrong. It's so far removed. We've got to get back to keeping violent criminals in jail. We have got to get back to making sure that the underlying causes of social disorder are dealt with, making sure that people struggling with addictions are placed into treatment rather than being handed out free supply of drugs endlessly and thinking that we're somehow solving a problem. That people with complex mental health challenges belong in facilities that you can actually care for compassionately and make sure that they are not just left on the streets to be preyed upon by bad actors. We can do all these things, and you know what? Everyday British Columbians agree. They go out on the streets, they go out on the downtown east side or anywhere else it is in the province, because it's around the entire province, and they know it's not working. No one looks at what's happening on our streets and says, let's do more of this. It is time for some serious change on that front. And I could talk so much about how this government's ideology has eroded our sense of public trust, has eroded our sense of pride in our province and our country. But perhaps there's no better example, and this is the last thing I'll talk about, is education. I feel it every day because, as I said, I have young kids. I've put them in kindergarten, in grade 3. And I'm hearing every day when they come home, they are being taught to feel ashamed of our history. They're being taught that we're a country full of bad people who treat each other terribly. They are taught that the land that they stand on doesn't belong to them. Conversations are being had between kids in the school system that are better had between parents and their children. And parents are feeling excluded. They're feeling as though they are not the single greatest advocate for their child's success, which in fact they are. So it is time to make sure that we're focusing on the core basics, ending the activism, scrapping SOGI. That needs to be out of schools. Ending the activism, getting back to core basics, because you know what? The actual results of the core basics are falling. We're seeing declining proficiencies in things like mathematics, declining proficiencies in things like literacy. Let's get back to the basics. Let's take the activism out of schools. Let's make sure that parents are treated as they are, as the single greatest advocates of their child's success, because we are not going to fix this province unless we deal with the fact that an entire generation of young British Columbians are being educated under an umbrella of NDP activism. End the activism in the schools. Bring back common sense to this government. Pull the ideology out by its roots. Until we do those things, we won't set BC back on track. So that's what this leadership race is all about. It's about who can actually recognize the depth of the problem, pull that ideology out by its roots, make sure that we're growing our appeal and winning a big, strong, conservative government majority in the next election. Thank you.